the Lagos State government says its Judicial Panel of Inquiry and Restitution for Victims of the Disbanded Police Unit, SARS, will begin its sitting on related abuses and the Lekki Toll Gate Incident on Tuesday. As more states continue to set up their individual judicial panels and ease curfews, we'll take a look at the legal and economic implications of the EndSars campaign and protest. And joining me for this conversation, I have Konyin Ajayi, he's a senior advocate of Nigeria and the managing partner at Olaniwun Ajayi LLP, and also Chamberlain Peterside, the CEO of Xcellon Capital Advisors. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining me on the show. And let me start with my esteemed lawyer here. Konyin, I'll need you to please speak on the need to create an atmosphere where justice is being seen to be done in Nigeria at a time like this.
Well, good morning. I think it's fundamentally important that as we begin to heal the wounds and the hurt that we all feel, given the events of the last 2 weeks, the tribunal must ensure that its activities are carried out in an absolutely transparent manner, and that the tribunal exhibits a lot of independence, so that we, the members of the public, would have absolute faith and confidence in what they are doing. I think to be useful for the tribunal to clarify very early on the extent of what it is investigating, the basis of what it is doing, and the extent of its powers. Once these assurances are given and we're sure of the direction of things, the confidence required by the grace of God will come. But it's absolutely important that, confidence is restored in the legal system.
But how is the Nigerian Bar Association playing a role in all of these events?
Well, the Nigerian Bar Association at the national level and various branches have stepped up their game. And I think one must give kudos to the president of the bar and his executive as to what they've been able to do since all this started. You recollect that when the demonstration started, the NBA president was up there in Abuja. He got the Speaker of the House of Reps to appoint, I believe, 7 or 11 members of the Nigerian Bar Association to come up with a new Police Reform Act. And I know they're working actively on this. One of my colleagues in my office, Michelle Agati, is one of the young people that the president of the bar invited to do this. Yet also, he toured the courts, especially the oldest court building in Nigeria. Unfortunately, one of our historical relics. He toured it, and he has already put out word that the members and the leaders of the bar should do everything they can to help the judiciary by assisting it with provision of duplicate records that were lost in the process. As you know, the bar has as its motto the rule of law. It has set up a number of committees to help with providing legal aid to people that have been unlawfully detained and things like that. And I'm sure the Bar Association, given the decision of its National Executive Committee last week, will be meeting the president very soon.
All right, now let me bring in a finance person into this discussion, and the person of Chamberlain Peterside. Chamberlain, looking at what has played out so far in the past, let's say, 3 weeks, quite a lot of economic implication when you look at what Nigeria has been grappling with. In a couple of weeks now, we're expecting the National Bureau of Statistics to come out with the GDP figures for the third quarter. From where you sit, though, I'd like you to speak on the amount of financial setback this will take us.
Yes, hi, Ken. This, you might call it a year of double whammy. We had initially the COVID-19 lockdown, And then now we have the EndSars protests. All this obviously is bound to have effect on the economy on multiple levels. First is the direct economic loss. By some estimates, it's it's thought that the losses based on the destructions and all the riots would cost anywhere up to 1.7 trillion naira. That's almost 20% of this year's budget. And so the second dimension of the losses is for businesses that haven't been able to open, that haven't operated for the last 2 weeks, the losses in man-hour, in productivity. There's also another level of loss that we're going to suffer, and which is the insurance losses. The claims are bound to spike for the small businesses and the large companies that have insurance covers. They are going to submit their claims. Whether or not the industry has the backbone and the robustness to meet these losses remains to be seen. Usually, insurance companies, as an industry, they're able to withstand losses, based on normal circumstances, not based on catastrophic losses that we might be able to see. So we just hope and pray that there are some lessons learned in this protest. I think it's transitioned from a protest to a campaign. We hope that there will be, some steps forward, some progress made in terms of, empowering the youth, job creation, that would stem the tide of this, kind of situations. When we had the xenophobic attacks in South Africa, it spilled over to riots and to destructions. So each time there's an occurrence, the flashpoints are always the businesses, the private sector operators. They bear the large brunt of these losses. So I think there should be a much more robust long-term effort to stem a reoccurrence of these kinds of events. It's quite sad. We truly feel for those who lost their lives, but I think there's a genuine concern here going forward that there has to be a different way of doing things to not only engage the youth, but to guide against losses at different levels. Activity obviously has been impacted by estimates. We're going to have a negative growth rate of 5.4% this year, according to the IMF. Now, we hope that that comes to be and not much more deeper losses or deeper economic growth that we'll experience. So it's been a tough year, and we hope that the government and private sector will come together and take a much more longer-term view as to protecting assets, private sector, and providing jobs too for the youth.
Right, talking about how the private sector can come in all of this, we saw during the COVID-19 pandemic, we saw the private sector come out strongly, to bring out resources to assist the government in spreading to the people. But sadly, we're seeing some of those resources being kept in warehouses, and now we're seeing that they are now subject to looting across the states.
Yes, indeed, that's quite disheartening. It just shows you that even if when the donations were put together by the private sector, it's still I don't know whether it's a tough task or it's because of red tape or whatever, premeditated reason why these things were stored in the warehouses. But it just shows the length of inertia and how slow the system has become in reacting to urgent needs. It didn't have to take SARS protest and SARS protest and demonstrations to loot and bring out those supplies. If they were donated, they were meant to be distributed. And why they weren't distributed all this while, it baffles me. But I think the system has to react much more proactively, more rapidly, and respond to the sensibilities and to the needs of the populace. We have a large contingent of vibrant youths who are unemployed, who are idle. At the slightest spark, they're going to light the fire anywhere else that you might not be watching. So it's a lesson for the government, even the state governments, that have taken delivery of these supplies and these donations and did not, and wasted time in distributing them. That shouldn't be. It's unconscionable.
All right, and let me bring in the senior advocate of Nigeria here, Konyin, and looking at the larger question on nationhood and building back trust, trying to close that deficit that exists with trust between the government and the people, even within the arms of government as a whole as well, talking about the executive and the judiciary. I would like you to speak on, how we can chart that course to build back trust, between the people and the government.
Well, I guess we first of all need to build trust between we the people and we the people. And then we come to the government and the people. And then the government between its various arms. Because there is clearly tension along different lines in society now. What we saw in the last 3-4 days was a clear division amongst us, the people, the hungry and angry poor, and the others that are not hungry, but maybe angry. And what we saw was criminal elements taking advantage. But then the very, very poor, hungry, and angry people, seeing the failure of government in their eyes, taking advantage, and then going after assets of the people. And when I say assets of the people, as you know, Arakuna Akeredolu said at the House of Lagos Governor yesterday, BRT buses belong to the people. They don't belong to the states. Lagos State High Court belongs to the people. They don't belong to the state. The biosecurity lab belongs to us, the people. We destroy the things that belong to us, not to government. Government is our servant. They are public servants. They're civil servants. They work for us. So we were destroying our own things. And then, assuming that those are public assets, we then turned on small enterprises. We went into shops, and I know many young people with small businesses, small shops that were damaged, small kiosks that were damaged. It belongs to us. So we were fighting ourselves because there's now distrust amongst us. And you see, no matter what we say of government, and we'll come to that in a second, those of us that are lucky and are favored to be privileged and advantaged not to be amongst the 100 million poor and hungry and angry Nigerians have just not done enough for them. We must extend ourselves. We must go out there and help them to get employment because many of them are graduates. We must do all we can. In spite of whatever hindrance government places in our way, we must go out there and share out of our possessions to help them, to build better schools, to train better teachers, to equip the hospitals. And we've seen with COVID, a coalition of top businessmen in the country. And, gladly, I happen to have had the privilege of being in a law firm that advised COVID. Over 30 billion was raised to help people. So we can help. And so we must help. And what Kakubit taught us, and I think we should learn more now, is that we should not wait for emergencies before we go out to help. And that when we have raised this money, we need not hand it over to government. These young people that are organized protests all over the country showed the discipline, the organization that can be brought to bear in distributing food, in providing medical care, providing security, providing environmental services, because we're doing all those things. On the streets, they clean the streets every day. They had their doctors, they had their phones, they had their lights, they had their electricity, they raised money, they distributed food to thousands of people without any fight or anything. So we need to, as a people, go out there and begin to behave like citizens. We have obligations as citizens. We don't need to wait for Abuja. We don't need to wait for Alausa. We don't need to wait for Ibadan for us to do these things. So that's the very first thing. We need to begin to build trust amongst ourselves. Now, those that we have elected, the way we would really make them to trust us is by demonstrating with our voters' card. We must ensure that we call them to action. There's no reason why, if there's any legislator, anyone, local government chairman, a member of the House of Rep, House of Assembly senator, that any group of people think is not performing, there are enough youths that can organize a vote to recall them. And I think once you have done that to one person, other people would know. Because as Atedo Peterside said on his Arise show the other day, there's carrot and stick. And we must use this stick for them to show that we have power. So they will trust us and treat us like people that must be well taken care of. So let us show them this. Let us show people in government that we have power, that our votes count, and that our votes can determine our future and our fortune. On the other hand, what the youth were crying for simply is good governance, which is what would ensure that we can trust them. They must be transparent with the money and resources and the power that we give them. The policeman that is on the street is representative of the head of state. Buhari is not going to see me. Boratai is not going to see me. Adamu is not going to see me. But a policeman will see me. The gun in the hand of the policeman is a surrender that we, the citizens, we give to those in power. We trust them with that. And they must engender that trust, return that trust by behaving responsibly, by behaving without any brutality, by behaving transparently. So let government begin to undertake the reforms that the concerned citizens issued in a statement to the head of state on Thursday.
All right, Konyin, very, very well eloquently put forward there. But then let me bring in Chamberlain here, because now we've seen this protest lead to like that glimmer of hope that Nigerians have been calling for and waiting for quite a while. But then it also exposes that the cracks in the state of human capital development, like Konyin was also talking about. And for young people who have been through this process, what's that sense of hope? And also, are we going to see a renewed exodus of youth and suffer more brain drain as a country?
Yes. First, let me say this. I mean, Professor Konyin made very good points, very valid points in terms of, building and rebuilding trust between the governing and the governed. Now, in terms of human capital development, the kind of people who fall into the category of very, very angry looters, you'd be surprised, are not your average educated youths. There's a saying that I read over the weekend that looters usually would go loot a supermarket and don't loot a bookshop. So it means that, in effect, that looters don't read and readers don't loot. Nigeria has a talent, a youth bulge, first and foremost, which I believe is a very, very positive attribute. But second of all, it also has, the populace amongst this youth groups that are educated, they are technologically savvy, and the sheer efficiency with which they organize themselves shows you they have something to offer. But unfortunately, the system hasn't been able to, bring them in, assimilate them, whether in the modern economy or even in the informal economy. Hence, their effort to try to take control, take charge of their own destiny. And then when they indulge in small businesses and the rest of things like that, they fall prey to, to police arrest and harassment. So the lack of use and lack of, integration of these youths into the mainstream of the economy is a colossal loss of human capital. So we have to look at this problem from two angles and from two levels. Number one is getting the talents that we already have engaged, having them gainfully employed or at least self-employed legitimately. Second of all is developing the talents and the knowledge and the skill set of those who have been left behind. I have to challenge you that it's not everyone who must be an IT specialist, who must be a doctor or a nurse or an engineer. We have a huge gap, skills gap, amongst artisans and amongst craftsmen in this country. What are we doing towards addressing that? I mean, look at how the offices and shops were all decimated. These are owned by young people, okay? And you have to be involved in any of these activities to see how skillful and how ready to work these young people are. However, they have been left behind, and when you do not tap your young population and harness their human capacity, then you're bound to have, you're bound to have their consequences, because at some point they get frustrated, they get angry. So take the two categories of youths and things of experience. Those who are able to organize themselves using technology, raising money, deploying doctors, getting ambulances, cooking food for the protesters, and those who came behind, run into town, go to malls and shops and totally decimate the place. There has to be an engagement on those two levels. Okay? Now, we keep talking about youth in leadership. Yes, it is wise to say youth should be involved and engage in leadership. But somebody had pointed out something, maybe yesterday, a few days ago, that after all, we had youths amongst the military leaders and amongst the political leaders, involved in politics. And most of them have now grown, but they started out as youths. Where did that take us to? So it's not until you have a youth as the head of state or the president or a legislator before you have change. No, the proactive must.
All right, let me bring in Konyin Ajayi to weigh in on this. Konyin,
yes.
Listening to Chamberlain and Peterside there, and looking at that new Nigeria we're trying to bring up for these young people who have been through this process that we're talking about right now, and trying to get out that sense of hope. I want you to speak to how we can see, if we're going to see that renewed exodus, on how and what do we have as a country to keep young people in Nigeria, especially the ones who are skilled and talented.
Don't be surprised if, as we had it in the first coming of our head of state, that we start seeing what we call Andrews, Nigerians going abroad as economic refugees, which is 1,000 pities. In as much as Nigerians in diaspora, represent a great source of foreign exchange earnings for all of us, it's not what we desire. We want them here to assist us and join hands to build our economy, so that we become not an exporter of raw materials, but a maker of goods and services for our people to enjoy the benefits of this land, and then to export whatever else we have made from them. We want to make chocolates and not just export cocoa. We want to make clothes and not just export cotton. We want to make finished petroleum products and not just keep exporting crude. We want to do all these things and use all the talents. Let's make glass. We have some of the best glass sands in the whole world somewhere in Ogun State, and so on and so forth. So there's so much we can do. But so what's the issue, and how do we do this? How do you ensure that the 200 million people you speak of, the 63% of them are from the youth, which represent super duper talent, become real opportunity and real income and real resource for the country, and not a liability? What is it? One, education, education, education. We need to train and retrain. And education is not university degree. Education also goes to the mechanic, the vulcanizer, the hairdresser, the welder, the spray painter, the carpenter. All of them need proper training. The driver needs proper training. And we need all these people in our value chain, up and down our production and productive capacities in the country. But the problem is this, and this is where trust in government comes. A young man applies for an approval. It takes him 6 months, 1 year, 2 years to get the approval. He's dead even before he started. A young man buys a plot of land and wants to get into agricultural farming. It takes him forever to get his CFO. What's going to happen to him? He's borrowed money to buy the land. A young man, a young woman has this great technological idea, wants to go into fintech, and then he's met by CBNC's come for a license, SEC says come for a license, Ministry of Finance's come for a license, NDIC says you have to talk to me. These are the things that are frustrating our people and making life difficult. The Vice President has a body on enabling business. They've come up with super duper guidelines. They've issued an executive order that you have to be dealt with within 30 days. But unfortunately, these things are just on paper and therefore make life more frustrating. Go to
All right, then,
CAC
definitely quite a lot for us to digest as we look at how to get the best out of Nigeria, especially at times like this. Very interesting insights put forward from my guest, Konyin Ajayi, who is the Senior Advocate of Nigeria and Managing Partner at Olaniwun Ajayi LP, and also Chamberlain Peterside, the CEO of Xcellon Capital Advisors.